Dr. Paul Zak, he is a Claremont Graduate University professor, which usually does not go in somebody's favor on this program, but in his case, it's a great thing. He has been studying scientifically how to improve your attitude in your life, how to create experiences that are really good, because we're changing as a society. I want to talk to him specifically about gratitude. His latest book is called Immersive, The Science of Extraordinary and the Source of Happiness. Welcome, Paul. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Glenn. Great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you. So I started the week asking my audience to start recognizing things that they're grateful for, because I think we're so far away from understanding gratitude and applying the actual action that should turn your gratitude into. We don't even recognize the things most time that we're grateful for. Can you talk to me a little bit about the science of gratitude and how it changes or perhaps doesn't change our life?
Right. I think your setup was exactly correct, that we have things that are so good now for most of us that we just feel like we're entitled to perfection. But we are a social species, and we need the other people around us to really live satisfied lives. So the data show that people who are grateful live longer and live healthier. That is, they flourish better. And they flourish because they're connected to those around us. So when we are the opposite of grateful, when we're entitled, who wants to be around that person? Oh, it's the worst.
I've noticed that because I used to be a despicable human being, alcoholic, and I was just really in my 30s, and I sobered up, and I started to live my life completely differently. And I used to think I hate people, and that's when I was miserable. I love people now, and I love talking to people. I love going into, a diner and the waitress, and we'll strike up a conversation. What's your life like? What's happening? And it makes me happier. It just makes me happier.
Yeah, and our brains evolved in human beings to connect to others. So we have specific anatomical functions that are different than any other animal that, as you said, give us that value of social connection. And when we're grateful, we are pleasant to be around. We are aware of other people's emotions. We let those people into our lives and vice versa. And so we end up being of service to others, right? And when you're nice to that waitress, she also has a better day. And then we start this virtuous cycle where you have a nice customer, the waitress is happy, she's nicer to the next customer. Right. And that's the way that we can improve society.
So social media has got to destroy happiness. With everything we're doing, where we're on our phones all the time, man, kids are sitting next to each other and they're not talking, they're texting each other. With AI starting to come, there's an app now where, you can have an AI friend that will talk to you. That's not the same. And it's just not, it seems to me that that's one of the things that we are really missing is a closeness to a physical friend or family. We're just caught up in this world, and that world that we're in is also telling us you don't have enough. Somebody has more.
Like every good question, the answer is yes and no, right? To the extent that people are lonely, that is not adaptive for human beings. It's a big risk factor for early death and unhappiness. So social media, in studies we've done, gives you between 50 and 80% of a real in-person interaction. So it's not a bad substitute. Now, the in-person, you have so much more bandwidth hitting your brain, right? You have touch, you have smell, you have eye contact. So you need that in-person interaction if you can get it. But if you can't, I think social media is not a bad substitute if you're using that to form connections. So not just looking at, a 5-second TikTok, but actually doing FaceTime, connecting to people on Facebook, whatever it is. And by the way,
actually talking to people or communicating one-on-one with somebody.
For sure.
Okay.
And what's really cool is that one-on-one builds our capacity to emotionally connect to others very rapidly. So the more we connect, the easier it is. And here's the really cool thing from a health perspective. Those social connections reduce cardiovascular stress, improve the immune system, keep us healthier and happier.
Okay, but may I just clarify one thing? That's not tweeting something and then reading the responses. That what you're talking about is an actual even if it's text back and forth with one another. You're talking about one-on-one communication or not?
Yes, sir. One-on-one, exactly.
Okay, all right. I'm sure you know about Glenn Fox, and imagine you're a Holocaust survivor, so everything's better than that.
Right.
Viktor Frankl, however, in Man's Search for Meaning, he found meaning because nothing had meaning. Does gratitude play a role at that point on a level we can all understand?
It does to the extent that it connects us to others, right? So Frankl found meaning in others and just living every day and of being of service to others. So part of the practice of gratitude is connecting and serving others and serving something bigger than yourself. That makes you grateful to be on the planet.
So when I said earlier this week that we just have to at least start noticing the things that we're grateful for, and every day, once a day when you get up, or twice a day, get up and go to sleep, or whenever you want to write it, but just write a list of the people and the things that you are grateful for. In my intent is that people will eventually start to say those things to those people and start to put into action those thoughts. But you first have to really kind of train yourself to notice these things. Is there any kind of benefit from just noticing those things, having that switch turn on?
There is, because again, it focuses us on being good members of our communities, right? Connecting us to others. Glenn, some years ago, Time Magazine, your favorite publication, asked me to write a couple of sentences on New Year's resolutions, which I'm not a big fan of, honestly. But they said, what's your New Year? And I said, what I really want to do is, for every social interaction I have, add love to the world. So I call that the Love Plus program. So I think that's a great way to show gratitude, right? So every time you interact with someone, are you adding love to the world? Are you decreasing love? Are you making that person happier or less happy? And if you're making that person happier, you get the reflection of that. They go, oh, wow, it was so great to talk to Glenn. He was so nice. I'm thinking of the waitress in the diner you spoke to.
Right.
So then you start this virtuous cycle, and that's where that gratitude has a global impact.
You have let me switch subjects here for just a bit, just to kind of slide over to something else that you do. You're an entrepreneur. You have, founded all kinds of different things, the Immersion Neuroscience, a software platform. And you have also been with some of the biggest businesses. You're a TED Talks guy, and you talk a lot about these experiences. People are craving for real experiences. And so you try to put this in and teach business people how to increase happiness through experiences. Are you looking yet at, things like the immersive experiences that are all digital? Things like the what is the thing called a metaverse? Are you looking into that? Are those the same as a real physical experience? Are real experiences, which I think people are craving, are they different than like what is coming in the metaverse?
Yes and no. I think our brain doesn't strongly differentiate between experiences in person and flickering images. Think of people crying at movies, which neurologically to me is fascinating. These are fictional stories. These are professional actors. You're aware you're in a theater, and yet at the end of the movie, the boy gets the girl. So I agree with you, Glenn. I think there's a risk that in the metaverse, with that 3D surround, that is going to be so compelling that we're just going to stay in our little rooms and never escape and talk to real humans, and lose that physical contact, lose that smell, that touch, that eye contact.
What does that do? Long run, I mean, it feels like we're running so many experiments on our children right now, with all of the stuff. I know Silicon Valley's like, no, my kids aren't online. My kids don't have these devices. And we don't even know what this is going to do to them. What does it do when you're trapped in a virtual world a lot of the time? Anything?
Again, from a neurologic perspective, the brain doesn't differentiate. We adapt right away to that new world. So again, if it's so interesting and compelling and much more, valuable to us than the actual world, then we do have a problem. So I think the answer is going to be a little bit's probably okay. Like, anything, like your food or
moderation,
a little bit's probably all right.
Yeah.
Exactly, but don't overdo it.
Right. With you saying that our happiness, what I'm searching here for, and I'm sure you know, I'm searching for what is the hole that we would be a good place to start filling in. There's so much suicide and despair and anger in the world. I know when I was younger, I really didn't want to have any children. I have 4 children, and now that I'm 58, all I can think of is I'm 59. I'm sorry. All I can think of now is, besides when did I get so old, is I wish I had 8 children, because they're the only thing. Family is the only thing that really gives true, lasting happiness. With us not having children, so many children, and women now waiting so long, is that affecting us too?
The data are not clear on that, but I think the great thing about children is they, particularly for men, they really humanize us, right? We really learn how to give full love to others. So I think people without children and people whose children are out of the house can take that same approach and apply it to our dear friends, to our elderly family members, to our nieces and nephews. Again, the brain is so adaptive, and we need connection, just desperately need it.
I have about 2 minutes left, and I just want to ask you, the science of the extraordinary is such a great opening line for your book, Immersion. Can you boil that down in 90 seconds and tell me what that is? What does it even mean?
Yeah, so there is a science to extraordinary experiences, from movies to customer experiences to social interactions. And it's driven by these 2 core neurochemicals that are measurable. And once we measure those, then we can really create extraordinary experiences. And as you said, Glenn, basically stretch our brains to be better social creatures, to be more emotionally connected to others, to be fully present, and really build our own happiness and flourishing.
And is this written for the average person, or is this mainly a business book of people how to run their businesses in a much more human sort of way to give the customer the best experience?
Yeah, it's really both. I mean, it focuses on businesses, but if you think about anything you do in your life, arranging your house, getting married, right, we're all creating experiences. So lots of tips on there on how to live a happier life. And again, stretch your brain to really be fully present for those around you.
I can't thank you enough for what you study, and we did our homework. You're not just only the leading source of this stuff. You are really, really buttoned up on it and have done so much. I am struggling to look how I can help my audience find peace in an absolute tumultuous world where everything seems upside down. We're missing something to be able to weather through this and be able to get to the other side, because we all will survive. And I'd like to talk to you again, and if there's ever anything that comes to mind, I'd love to talk to you. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Glenn.
Appreciate
I'm grateful for you.
God bless. Me too, for you. Dr. Paul Zak. The name of the book is Immersion. We barely talked about it, but pick it up. The science behind what happens when we feel gratitude